advantage to Aaron Cheruiyot by a predetermined margin.
What those who manipulated the results did amounted to a controlled experiment such that for every genuine vote that the KANU candidate received, the manipulation system awarded the JAB candidate 1.5 votes.
According to KANU's tally, its candidate Paul Sang trounced Jubilee's Aaron, and it was by a huge margin.
The KANU candidate Paul Sang garnered 126,493 against Aaron Cheruiyot of JAB, who got 38,162.
Hawa watu wa KANU pale ni kama walitembea na watu wengine wa code mpaka historia yao inakuwa sawa. Ukipoteza kura unasema uliibiwa.
KANU says it is leaving its options open and will not petition Aaron Cheruiyot to win just yet.
These people stole the votes, but they did not steal their hearts.
Aaron Cheruiyot is set to be sworn in as Kericho Senator this week. But as KANU contemplates its next move following the mini poll, which was seen as a test of the popularity of Deputy President William Ruto, KANU officials insist the cockerel did in fact crow. Rita Tinina, KTN News.
The police have clarified that the recent movement of bodyguards attached to VIPs was part of an ongoing rationalization program. The Coast Police Commander Francis Wanjohi said the process will affect all VIPs and has nothing to do with politics, as has been alleged in some quarters.
We are talking of withdrawal, we are talking of rationalization, whereby you should not have more bodyguards than what the law actually stipulates. Do you so for the governor, he had to get 2 for the night for his residence, and 2 during the day, and 1 from Kenya Police who will be his bodyguard during the day.
All right, so I want to just give you an update on that poll that was released today by InfoTrack, and it's talking about the state of the country and how people feel and what are some of the issues that are most important to them. So let's take a look at some of those now right here on our Super Wall. And have it. This is the staggering number that you need to focus on. 47% of the people who were surveyed by InfoTrack said the condition of life is the worst ever possible. The worst ever possible. That is what they had to say. That's about half of those people who were polled who seemed despondent. And the next number we have here is to talk about the top 3 issues that Kenyans want addressed by their leaders. Of course, top on that is corruption, the high cost of living, unemployment. We'll be discussing corruption in this bulletin as we speak to the chair of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, Philip Kinisu. And of course, he has a big burden on his shoulders, as you can see, an issue that is fairly important to the country at this moment, seeing all the scandals that we have seen in the past on this issue. I'd like us to take a look at our final one here. 32% of those who are surveyed want corruption dealt with. Now, this is a bit of a reduction since November when it was slightly higher. Why did this happen? Believe in some of the efforts they have seen. Remember, Philip Kinisu took over at the EACC in January this year. We will be speaking to Angela Ambitho from InfoTrack Harris in just a moment for more on this. But speaking of corruption, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission's Chief Executive Officer, Halake Wako, is a man under siege tonight. A number of issues have been raised regarding his conduct. He now finds himself in what may well be termed as a litany of errors. Some claim he could be working as a lone ranger and making unilateral decisions to safeguard certain government interests. Just this week, EACC's new chair, Philip Kinisu, admitted before a parliamentary committee that former Devolution Secretary Anne Waiguru was cleared unprocedurally and is being investigated afresh. So, tonight we ask, should the CEO quit and also be investigated? Political affairs reporter Duncan Hayamba takes a look at this issue.
The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Chief Executive Officer Halake Wako has been and continues to be under fire for the manner in which he appears to be running the show. A situation that has attracted calls from a section of political leaders led by Firebrand Nandi Hills Member of Parliament Alfred Keter, who are now calling for a staff overhaul at the Secretariat.
I will petition Parliament so that we ensure that we have a clean EACC, an institution that can fight graft.
Controversy and suspicion about his dealings at EACC started last year in April after President Uhuru Kenyatta presented to Parliament a 175-member list of shame on corruption during his second State of the Nation address. A list that was contested with the then EACC Commissioners Mumo Matemu, Irene Keino and Jen Onsongo categorically stating they never authored the list since investigations were still underway. Claims emerged from the opposition that President Kenyatta's list was a parallel one authored by the CEO, which had omitted names of some individuals, including former devolution CS Anne Waiguru and IEBC Chairman Isaac Hassan.
He is actually not going for the real culprits. He goes for people who are politically safe.
After the hounding out of office of the immediate former commissioners, Halake Wako was the man in charge at the EACC, whereby it's alleged a litany of errors soared high. For instance, on the ever-changing twist in the National Youth Service saga, Wako wrote a letter to State House Chief of Staff Joseph Kinyua absolving CS Anne Waiguru of any wrongdoing in the 791 million shilling NYS scandal, only for businesswoman Josephine Kafura to emerge with an affidavit detailing how Waiguru was allegedly at the center of the IFMIS scam. In the first place, that letter by Wako clearing Waiguru should have been sent to the Director of Public Prosecutions and not State House. How the DPP's office was bypassed and State House communicated to raised more suspicion on whose instructions was Halake Wako acting on.
If you goofed, then the chair, the commissioners, and the CEO need to vacate office.
On Eurobond saga, the EACC CEO dismissed claims by opposition code, saying there was no evidence that money had been lost, only for the Director of Public Prosecution Keriako Tobiko to order fresh investigations into the matter. Report presented within 10 days.
There has been a lot of flip-flopping. There has been, even the courts themselves say that, their reporting mechanism on investigations were not correct.
That one I would wish to leave it to the process.
Campaign appears to be on form from across the political divide to have Wako leave office if war on corruption is to be taken seriously.
There is just generally lack of professional work that is being done.
If Uhuru wants to fight corruption, let him go for people who are actually engaged in corruption. Why are people so brazen on the issue of corruption? Look at the case of the youth funds. Mr. Odhiambo actually acknowledges that there was corruption in the way the matter was dealt with. What are we seeing? Absolutely nothing being done.
It would appear for the EACC, the more things change, the more they remain the same. Will the Philip Kinisu-led commission be the game changer in the fight against corruption, or will they be hurriedly hounded out of office as their predecessors? Duncan Hemba, KTN News.
All right, so we want to talk about corruption, the state of the nation, and how Kenyans feel about the general direction their country is headed. We told you about those statistics a little earlier. You can see on our Super Bowl. Angela Mbitho joins us now from InfoTrack. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So let's talk about this number. 47% think they're living their worst life ever.
Yes.
We're pretty despondent, aren't we?
We are. And I think one shouldn't be too surprised. When you have an economy that is perhaps looking like it's dwindling, the dollar at the rate that it is at right now, the shilling, is not very stable, and then we link that to mismanagement of public funds, your and my taxes, then, I think one can very easily see that, life can be difficult. People can't make ends meet. They can barely afford to cater for their basic needs.
Right.
And when you talk to people today, surprisingly, I've received more than 300 texts from people saying, this is my story.
Okay.
You have told my story.
All right. And another thing that you talked to them about was some of the issues that they, value the most or want to address the most, that bother them. And as you can see, corruption is at the top of the list.
It's still a problem. Albeit, the fact that, as you mentioned before, it's reduced by about 9% if we compare it to November. It's still that dragon or elephant in the room. And like we said in our report, whilst there seems to be some goodwill to tackle corruption, and we saw some activities and actions being taken around December or last year, it's just bare minimum. It's just bare minimum. And we do see Honorable Millie Odhiambo saying there are things that just absolutely shock Kenyans when we read about them in terms of the plunder of our public resources.
Yeah, and the vast amounts, the colossal amounts that are involved these days. I just want to talk a little bit about also faith in institutions that fight corruption.
Right.
What does this survey say about that? How optimistic are we that these independent organizations can fight this war successfully?
Let me say Mr. Kinisu has a lot of work to do. The confidence rating right now, EACC, when looked at against other public institutions, including the police, the judiciary, IEBC, is at its lowest. It's at the bottom of the ladder. And so the confidence rating for EACC right now is at 40%. I think what Kenyans generally feel is that not enough is being done. There's more bark than bite. We hear arrests. We hear that they're threatening to do ABCD,
We don't hear convictions.
But there are no convictions. And when you look at the data, what you do see is there is a question that was asked, what would you like done with public officials found to be culpable of those crimes? And an overwhelming majority want to see action. Heads roll.
People behind bars.
People behind bars. If we can very quickly and expeditiously, prosecute and jail a boy buys lotion for his sweetheart, 700 shilling lotion, 2 years sentence. I wonder why it takes us so long to deal with the public officials that plunder so much money.
Billions of shillings. As it is. I want to talk about this figure just once more as we close. We're a pretty hopeless lot. So how important is hope? In terms of moving the country forward, and what needs to happen for this number to change and significantly go down?
Yvonne, you're here because you have hope. You're working because you have hope, and that's why you're productive, and that's why people watch you. When a people are hopeless, when they are not optimistic, then what tends to happen is that their productivity is low because they are apathetic. They have no hope that tomorrow will mean anything. So you sit back.
And this has effects on the economy, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Because if you don't have the drive to work, then
Absolutely. In fact, most economies now, in the developed world, conducts optimism and condition of life indices every quarter, because they know that there's such a thread and link between how people feel and their condition of life and how productive they can be. And so if they feel that tomorrow is going to be bleak, then many of them perhaps thread that to everything they see in their environment and say, what's the point?
Indeed.
What's the point of waking up?
Right. Thanks for, of course, making that linkage and showing us the thread between optimism and productivity and output, and indeed the effect it has on the economy. Angela Ambitho from InfoTrack Harris joining us tonight to just talk about that poll that is out today. We have our own little mini poll here on KTN News. Please go check it out on Twitter. We're asking you whether you think the EACC chair, Philip Kinisu, will succeed in the war against graft. But let's continue to talk about money. Your money, to be precise. Just how much do you know about the Action Social Development Fund? Well, with just about 18 months to the general election, our senior political reporter Chris Thairu established that very few Kenyans are aware that the kitty even exists, let alone that women reps already received, get this, 1.2 billion shillings from this fund. Here he is now with an in-depth look at the kitty, which was established last year.
For the past 3 years, all the 47 women representatives have been struggling to define their role and a devolved structure. They did not have a kitty to facilitate the achievement of their mandate. Less than 6 months since the implementation of the affirmative